Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. I am your host, Tommy Brzee. As always, it is April 10th, a Wednesday, and let's jump right into what we have planned for today. We're going to start talking a little bit about the transfer portal. There have been a couple of people around the country who are big-time players who have made their intentions known that they will be entering the transfer portal. I've talked a little bit about how crazy I think this is going to be, but I thought I'd break it down a little bit more for you all and give you some of the names that are currently in the portal, even though plenty more will be joining them very, very soon. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Caleb Williams. There's been a ton of criticism around him the last couple of really months as we lead up into the NFL draft, so I wanted to break down kind of my thoughts on all of that. Is it fair? Is it not? Then we'll get a little bit of a recruiting update for you all, tons of commitments and stuff happening over the weekend, tons of big-time visits happening with spring games all over the country, and then we'll finish up with another Spotlight Wednesday and talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. Obviously, a ton riding on this season, very exciting season for them, so we will break down that. But before we jump in, I do want to remind you all, we get tons of questions and comments throughout the show, and the best way for you all to get your question on the screen is to use the tip and donation link at the bottom of the screen, gsmcpodcast.net. It's a huge help not only to us here at the network, but to you all. You get to watch the show, maybe leave a comment or a question, see it on the screen, I'll read it out, and maybe we can have a fun back and forth here. But again, that's gsmcpodcast.net if you want to do any of that. But let's jump right in. The transfer portal has been insane. It's been crazy for quite some time. I've talked a little bit about how this upcoming cycle from April 15th to the 30th, I think could be the craziest of the bunch, and that is not being subsided at all as we get closer to this. I was watching Josh Pate earlier this week. He seems very, very confident that this is going to be off the charts insane. And I think that's something that a lot of people have the same sentiment of, whether it's behind the scenes and not in front of a camera or other people on other shows talking about it. It feels like everyone is preparing for essentially the worst in some of these circumstances. So we've talked about it a little bit, and one of the things that I've been doing throughout this time is a Spotlight Wednesday, which we'll have at the end of the show today, just kind of breaking down teams and rosters and their coaches. And the only thing that I feel super confident in when I do this stuff is the coaching staff, because it's very unlikely, unless there's some crazy change at this point in time, that you will lose a coach at this point. But you're going to lose players, and pretty much everyone is going to lose players probably this time next week, to be totally honest with you. There will be some players walking out of your program, so it's going to be crazy. And there's that worry where I put out a couple of these Spotlight Wednesdays, hoping that those teams don't get gutted too bad, but it could happen to any team in the country. So if that does happen, I will redo that one, and we'll kind of reassess where they're at. But as we've kind of talked about, Josh Pate has been someone that I listen to a lot, just because he's someone in the industry I have a lot of respect for and think does the job very, very well. But he's been talking about this for quite some time. I've told the story on here a couple of times, but I think it's worth telling again just because of how insane it is. But he was talking on his show probably about 2 weeks ago or so about a conversation he had had with someone that's very plugged into a certain university. He didn't give names, obviously. He didn't tell the university, obviously, because then no one's talking to him for quite some time. But he went on to say, essentially, that this person knew that there was an entire position room within their team that was going to be out the door. Now, they were on the roster for the time being, but they knew for a fact that they were finding their way to another university starting next week. So that's crazy in and of itself. The fact that a player has made up their mind and not made that known, is still going through practices with the team that they have no intention of hanging out with beyond, next Monday, is already a very, very weird concept. But the weirder part of it is this person also said they know exactly who they're going to replace all these kids with. They know who they're going to go after from specific universities to replace everyone that's going to be walking out the door. that's even crazier. The idea that an entire staff knows pretty much exactly their plan of attack for kids who are already on other rosters for when this happens. They already know who they're going to go after, how those conversations are going to go. Some ways they already know they have that kid locked up. So obviously a crazy situation. Josh Pate has doubled down a number of times on his show talking about just how crazy this cycle is going to be, and with how well plugged in he's going to be, or he is in real time, I think I'm willing to believe him on that. I think it's going to be off the charts. I think he did say also there's some teams that feel very good right now that won't feel very good in 2 weeks. He said there are some teams that aren't title contenders that will find themselves in title contention after 2 weeks. So there will be teams that, really benefit from this. There will be teams that get gutted from this, and it's probably going to be the teams that you expect, right? It's usually the teams up top are the teams that benefit the most, or at least are hit the least by these type of things, and then it's the teams that you expect to get gutted that will get gutted. The teams that are a little bit lower on the totem pole, as the totem pole becomes even more clear in college football. But just to give you an idea of guys who have already made their intentions known, obviously this is going to be a list that continues to rise even over the next couple of days as this week goes on and more of those one-on-one conversations start to happen between coaches and players. But just to give you an idea of where we sit today before everything goes crazy, I'll give you a couple of names here. Caden Proctor, we've talked about a couple of times on here. He's almost definitely making his way back to Tuscaloosa. It sounds like the little sojourn he took in Iowa City did not go as well as he had planned. He's probably going back to Tuscaloosa and will be on Bama's roster, will likely be a starter for them in the fall. That has gotten a lot of publicity, so I don't think that's necessarily one that will surprise anyone. One that came out yesterday was Damian Martinez, a very talented and tough running back that will be a plug-and-play at many schools around the country. I think the main one that I circled at least early on in this process was LSU. I think there's someone that could definitely use a little bit of help in that running back room, and Damian Martinez would absolutely start for that team, or at least get major carries as they kind of rotate different guys in and out. Now, it's not a bad room necessarily at LSU, but they could use that top-end talent at that running back position. So I would expect LSU to be in on it. I think Kentucky's another team. Chip Trayanum and Sumo Caring are a good duo, but definitely adding someone else to that mix would help a lot. And then Ole Miss, they have Ulysses Bentley, but could definitely use a little bit more help there. I think they're getting the backup from Miami. I could not remember his name for the life of me, but it looks like they might be getting reinforcements there anyway, with another person coming on over. So maybe they're not as interested as the other two, but I think LSU is someone definitely to watch in that recruitment. Another one that will likely be the topic of conversation early on in this transfer portal cycle is Bear Alexander. He's someone that went into the portal, or at least made his intentions known yesterday. He's remarkably talented. There's no two ways about that. This is a guy that could absolutely play on Sundays, but there's going to be some questions that he's going to have to answer before a team, gives him a committable offer. Because I don't know if you know much about Bear Alexander's history, but he is someone who, since his freshman year in high school, has been at a different school every single year. So he's been at 6 schools in 6 different years, and is on the way to do a 7th in year 7. So that obviously is not necessarily something that NFL scouts or that college football coaches are looking for from their guy. They want someone that's going to stay put. Now, it sounds like Bear Alexander is trying to go kind of closer to home, trying to kind of get back to his roots. He is from Texas, kind of the Dallas area, so I think UT will be involved big time. I think A&M will definitely give him a call. Tons of teams will be giving this kid a call. It's just the question of, once he gets on campus, is he solid, or is there still question marks around is he going to be finding another place to play in year 8? But at the end of the day, this is a very talented kid. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully he can kind of find a place where he can thrive and show off his remarkable athletic ability, because he's definitely someone that could be a Sunday-type player for many years, as long as he can kind of just kind of get a little bit better head on his shoulders and focus a little bit more on football and staying consistent, I suppose is the best way to put it. But let's move on to another big-time defensive lineman, an edge rusher out of Miami. Nigel Kelly is someone that is going to be very interesting. I think this is kind of a depth chart casualty, to be totally honest. Ruben Bain is a young player that I've talked about a couple of times on here. He's a freshman going into his sophomore year now, and I just think Nigel Kelly was going to have a hard time finding the field with some of the younger guys they have on there and Ruben Bain. Now, he would have played, but it would have been more of a rotational piece. He's someone that definitely can play big-time snaps for some other teams that might need a little bit of edge rushing, so there would be plenty of a market for this kid. He's very talented, 6'6", so plenty of length, can do a ton of really, really good things. So I think he's someone that might not necessarily pop off the page, but will definitely be a good rotational piece for whatever team ends up picking him up. Dallin Hayden, a running back out of Ohio State, another depth chart casualty that I think a lot of people expected, to be totally honest. He stayed through spring, tried to kind of like battle it out in this running back room, see where he landed. It seems like he's landing towards the end. Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson are going to hold down that room. It's going to be really hard for Dallin Hayden to get in unless there was some type of injury to one of those two guys. So Dallin Hayden, definitely a very talented running back, played kind of sparingly for Ohio State in the past couple of years, but is plenty talented, and plenty of teams need running back help, as we just talked about. So they will definitely be looking out for this kid, and I think he will definitely find a Power 5 school to call home for his next place. But let's move right on here. Miles Slusher is a safety from Colorado. This one is a little bit more interesting to me because, at least in my eyes, he was in line to start next year. Now, I could be wrong about that. I'm not exactly sure how that was shaking out there, but I assumed it was going to be him and Shiloh Sanders in the back end of that defense at safety, and it seems like it's not going to be Slusher at least. So I don't know if that's transfer portal kids coming in and proving themselves early. I don't know if that's, him just not being super happy about the situation in Colorado. But whoever gets him is getting a big-time player who's played a lot of football, which is always a great thing, especially for someone playing safety, right? You need to be able to be kind of that security blanket over the entire defense, and getting someone like him for whoever does, I think will be a really, really solid pickup. Might be a little bit more under the radar as we get more and more names in the portal, but definitely someone that will have a big-time market, and whoever gets him will be very happy they did. And then finally, I wanted to highlight this story. Darian Brown is a running back that has been at Texas for quite some time. I believe he was in the 2018 recruiting class, if I'm not mistaken, but he signed with Texas out of Buford High School in Georgia before he suffered a stroke that created a ton of medical problems that he had to go through. There were just insane amounts of hurdles for him to get over, so it kind of his football career kind of came to a halt very quickly. He's been on a medical scholarship at Texas for the past couple of years, but he has now been cleared to play football again, so he is in the transfer portal. Just wanted to kind of highlight his story. Hope he finds a home. Hope he finds a place where he can get back on the field, be happy and healthy, and kind of just, live out the dream that he's been waiting just way too long to be able to do. So really looking out for that kid. Very excited to see where he ends up because very, very talented. Coming out of high school, he's a 4-star. Going to Texas, Texas expected him to be one of their big-time backs in the line of incredible amounts of big-time backs. But it didn't quite work out there, but hopefully he finds his place and is able to play some college football this time next year. But those are some names just to kind of let you know where we're at right now. Now, that's the tip of the iceberg. I'll be totally honest with you. There is so much under the surface that is a lot scarier and a lot bigger, and the names, I think there will be a couple where you look at your phone, see the name that is in the portal, and your jaw drops. I'm sure there will be a couple for me. I think this is just something we're just going to have to prepare ourselves for. It's one of those things that you got to hope that your team comes out the other side intact. You got to hope that you don't lose, big-time players this time around, but there's going to be teams that do. There's going to be teams that are right now, the head coach feels really good about where their roster's at, where their team is at, and they won't in 2 weeks. So it's going to be a weird time. There's going to be a ton of different things, bouncing around and craziness. And I've said it a million times, but I'll say it 1,000,001. The transfer portal system just needs to be fixed. Now, the entity itself is not a bad entity, and people will try to tell you that it is. People will try to, spin narratives against the transfer portal at all. It's an important thing to this sport. Now, the way it's being utilized, the way it's being put into action is not about this sport, and is not good for this sport. It's definitely the detriment to the team, the coaches, the players, and more importantly, the sport in the short term. I think all of this is going to be very, very, very weird and create a lot of confusion and a lot of anger around college football fans. But at the end of the day, I think this is something that might just be necessary. It's something that we kind of need a big time moment to get everyone's attention, that this is something that needs to be fixed. I talked yesterday that the NCAA is thinking of getting rid of any limitations to transferring, so you can transfer as many times as you want. As long as you're academically eligible, you're good to go. That is not something I love, and definitely something that would create even more problems for this. But the amount of coaches that you will be here talking in coded language over the next month, talking about other coaches stealing their players, is going to be insane. The number of names bouncing around is going to be wild. There will be guys that jump in and then jump out to go to their old team. There will be guys that maybe commit to multiple teams in the 15-day window. Who knows? But good news for you all is you do not have to worry about all that, because I am worrying about all that. So just tune in at 9 a.m. Eastern every day, and we will have all of that updated for you. If you can't tune in at 9 a.m. Eastern, obviously we will have the segments up on the YouTube right afterward. So don't worry about trying to keep up with this. I will keep up with it for you. Just watch the video and, you'll be up to date. But to end this up, buckle up, because it's going to be wild, but I like to think that we will find our way through this crazy storm, and the sport might just be better long-term because of it. But we're going to take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Caleb Williams. There's been a lot of criticism around him, including one very recently. I think yesterday was really when it kind of blew up. So I'll speak on that and kind of if I think, those criticisms are fair. So stick with us right after, and we'll talk about that right after this.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the transfer portal and all of the craziness that is about to unfold over the next couple of weeks there, but now let's talk about Caleb Williams, and let's get into some of the criticisms around him over especially the last couple of weeks. I've noticed there's been quite the uptick as we get closer and closer to the draft. There's going to be more things to be said about the top pick. There's no two ways about that. So definitely some things that Caleb Williams, was in line for, as he was the top player in the draft. That kind of just comes with the territory. But some of this stuff is a little goofy. I honestly have been holding on to this topic for quite some time, because most of the comments around him, most of the criticism around him, I thought was dumb, to be totally honest with you. I thought it was pointless to even talk about, and was not really worth your time, or frankly my time. But there has been a couple more criticisms that I think deserve a little bit more of attention, and I'll just go through kind of what I think about all of them, because there are some ridiculous ones, but there are some fair ones also kind of mixed in there. But let's start with the more trivial stuff, the more ridiculous stuff, and then we'll get to the stuff that actually could be concerning for him. So the most ridiculous and trivial knock is and talk around him has comfortably been him painting his nails or doing photo shoots with GQ or whatever you want to say. It's just beyond ridiculous. And it's not necessarily that I'm hating on any one particular person or going after people in any way, but if that's the thing you're worried about, I really hope you're not holding out hope to be in a front office one day, because you will not be. That pretty much as clean as I can put that. That is beyond ridiculous criticism of him and has absolutely nothing to do with the football player he will be at the next level. Then I heard some about, the emotional moments he had throughout college, whether it was, after the Pac-12 championship game or after some of the games last year, showing some of that emotion and being a little bit less, football tough than some people expect him to be. Again, I think this is ridiculous. I see how some people might think this is a bigger deal than other ones, but I don't seem to care, if I'm being totally honest. To me, him crying or him showing emotion after those games shows me that he cares about his team and his teammates in this game. So, you can be upset about that if you want. That's another one that I just don't want to spend too much time on because I think it's just goofy, if I'm being totally honest. Now let's get to the most recent piece of criticism from Greg McElroy that I believe came out yesterday, or at least Caleb Williams responded to it yesterday, saying that he has not faced any adversity. So I shrugged off the first two because, they're trivial, they're dumb, they're not really worth talking about because they have nothing to do with him being a quarterback. But this one's a little bit ridiculous. I think this one is one that, first of all, doesn't make sense, and second of all, is just a little unfair to Caleb Williams, I think. So, first of all, the idea that anyone at Caleb Williams' level of success in this sport has not faced adversity is crazy. I understand that he is remarkably talented. I understand he has physical gifts that most people do not have. It doesn't change that the amount of work that he has put in to get to this point is insane. Most of us would never do the amount of work that Caleb Williams has put in to get to the point where he is a Heisman winner, where he is going number one overall and getting all this talk around him. So the idea that any athlete, whether it is, football or basketball or swimming, if anyone in an athletic position where they are at the top of their game, they are the most talked about thing in that sport at the time being, like Caleb Williams is right now in football, they have gone through a remarkable amount of adversity, whether it's injuries or just waking up at 5 a.m. and going to that extra workout and doing the things that not everyone else is willing to do. So that part of it is crazy in and of itself. Any elite athlete has gone through adversity pretty much every single day as they go on that journey to become an elite athlete. But second, let's focus a little bit more in on Caleb Williams. The idea that he hasn't faced adversity is crazy as well. He obviously, has done incredible things throughout his college career, but I think people are somewhat forgetting how his college career started. He walked into an Oklahoma room where Spencer Rattler, now we can have revisionist history and talk about what happened in the rest of his football career, but when he came in, Spencer Rattler was getting as many rave reviews as anyone in the country. He was all over the place. There were people picking him to be the number one pick in the draft. There were people picking him to be the Heisman winner. I mean, Lincoln Riley had already spit out a ton of Heisman winners at that point, so it wasn't the craziest thought. The kid had crazy arm strength, had tons of remarkable things, which he still has, to be totally honest with you. We can break that down in the draft segment, but Spencer Rattler coming in was the prodigal son, to be totally honest with you. There was really no chance that he was not going to be the starter going into the season, and no Oklahoma fan would have told you going into that season that Spencer Rattler was ever going to lose that job. They never thought that was going to be in the cards. Now, once he did in that Texas game, Caleb Williams didn't look back. He walked into that game, absolutely tore Texas to pieces, and that's coming from a Texas fan. That was a tough day. I won't lie to you. He was just on another level that entire day. So he didn't look back once he got on the field, but not being on the field after being, the guy for so long is not an easy thing to overcome. And people might, think it is, but even as a freshman, there are things that you have to deal with that you've never had to deal with before, especially being a backup quarterback. So that's one example. Then he transferred to USC, and obviously, he was going over with his coach. There were some staff members going over with him and some players as well. So there was a comfort level. I'm not going to act like him transferring is the same thing as some of these other kids who are going into totally new situations transferring, but he did have to deal with some new things. There's no two ways about that. Anytime you move colleges or move in general, there's a lot of adapting to do to the new lifestyle that you're under, especially when you're going from Norman, Oklahoma to LA. It's quite the adjustment, but he adjusted to it obviously very, very well. I think he was a little bit more at home in LA than in Norman, but he went on to have his Heisman season, do incredible things throughout that season, and then he hurt his hammy in the Pac-12 title game. And a game they likely would have won if he was on the field. I think everyone tends to believe that, but that's something that, for whatever reason, we just kind of throw by the wayside. We talk about how he's never won anything. We talk about how he's, hasn't gotten to a college football playoff, but at the end of the day, he was, a popped hamstring away from a Pac-12 title, and that's something totally out of his control. And also, he ended up playing the entire game and fighting tooth and nail to try to win that game against Utah. It just wasn't in the cards because of that injury. And then finally, the final year in college did not go as planned. Period. End of story. They wanted to make a championship-type run, and they ended 7-7, largely because of things that were totally out of his control. The defensive side of the ball, some, crazy stuff that Caleb Williams had nothing to do with. So it led to a ton of controversy around him and his team. So, you can say all you want that this kid, has ultimate talent and has walked through college football and has not faced any adversity, but I just don't buy that. I will never buy that for pretty much anyone that has, done elite things at college football. Now, there are more hurdles for some others. When you talk about someone like Stetson Bennett or Baker Mayfield, those were walk-ons that had to make their way up the ranks. That's a little bit harder. I'm not going to act like they aren't, but the idea that Caleb Williams has not battled and has not faced adversity to get to this point is just ridiculous. So that's another one that I am not a fan of, but we're done with the goofy criticism, the one that I'm not giving a lot of, putting a lot of stock in, but let's get to the ones that actually I think could be kind of an issue when you look at this guy. So Caleb Williams is a remarkable prospect. He is on a really, really elite level, but he's not the same level prospect as Trevor Lawrence or as Andrew Luck. In my mind, I just don't see him on the same level as those guys, and there's a couple of reasons. He's only like a notch below, like very, very close to that type of level, but I don't think he is that elite level prospect that those guys were. And I think there are some worries about his ability to read defenses and kind of go through, the progressions he needs to go through when they're good at disguising coverages. You saw the Notre Dame game this past year. Marcus Freeman is as good as there is in the country at setting up different coverages and messing with different things, and it messed with him. There's no two ways about that. So I think that's something at the next level that you could be a little bit worried about. He also has kind of this Superman tendency. He's so remarkable with his athletic ability that there's times when he will leave clean pockets and try to make that highlight play during times. And some of that is, out of necessity for some of the O-line plays. Some of that is just him being him. And that's stuff that just can't really happen in the NFL. Now, there are certain guys that kind of make it happen, the Josh Allens of the world, every now and then will make just ridiculous plays, but you can't do that on a consistent basis, and Caleb Williams has gotten a little bit comfortable doing that, so that's another thing I would be a little bit worried about is just, he could get himself into more trouble than he needs to on certain plays as he goes through the early parts of his career. And then finally, Caleb Williams does not miss a ton of throws. He's a very accurate quarterback, but those deep crossers that are more about timing and less about arm talent are a little bit tougher for him. The ones that are a little bit more mundane, to be totally honest with you, tend to be a little bit tougher. If he misses those early on in his career, they likely won't be falling to the turf. They likely will be in the hands of a defender running the other way down the field. And if those start to pile up, then Bears fans will have a little bit of deja vu. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that is remarkably talented. There's no two ways about that. I think anyone that has watched him is just insane. Is just shows or knows exactly what this kid is about, knows how remarkable he is on the football field. Now, there is one final concern of mine that it's hard to kind of gauge how big of a concern this actually is or can be until he is drafted and we see how he reacts with his teammates. But the first three criticisms, the ones that I felt were ridiculous and I didn't spend too much time on, there's a reality where some of his future teammates or some of his future coaches or whoever don't think those are so silly, don't think those are as goofy and trivial as I do. And if they do think that, then it could cause some issues. I'm not going to lie. He's going to be under a microscope the second he gets onto a team. His teammates are going to be watching him very, very closely. So he's got to be, ready to roll, ready to be a team player first and foremost, but also be a leader, be the guy that he has been for the last couple of years and kind of develop those great relationships that he's developed at USC and Oklahoma. I mean, all of his teammates speak very glowingly about this guy. So as long as he can handle that part of it, I think it won't be too big of an issue. So he's someone that will be under scrutiny every single turn he makes. You're a top pick in the draft. It kind of comes with the territory. If he makes missteps, there will be plenty of people ready to jump all over him. So he's going to have to be very diligent. He's going to have to be smart, not make any big-time mistakes. But at the end of the day, I have full confidence in his ability to handle this situation and absolutely dominate at the next level. Now, I don't know how quickly that happens. I think he's someone that some people might think is going to walk into the league and change it overnight. I don't necessarily see that as the same thing. I think he's someone that could take a year and a half to really, really hit the strides that he's capable of. But as we know, when he hits those ceilings that he has, there's very few quarterbacks that you can find on planet Earth that are as talented as this kid. So, a lot of people will get caught up in the trivial stuff. A lot of people will talk about the nails painting and the wearing a dress and a cover of a magazine and doing X, Y, and Z after it doesn't matter. If you want to get caught up in trivial stuff, that's on you. If you want to talk about football, I'm here for you. So I understand that there is going to be criticism around this kid. I understand that he is someone that a lot of people want to be talking about right now, but a lot of the criticism that he has gotten thus far is just pointless and just does not add anything to the conversation and doesn't do anything for me or for any scout when they're talking about this kid. But I'll leave that there. We might be talking about that later on as the draft gets closer, but for the time being, I'll leave that be, and we'll take our second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about recruiting, a little bit of a recruiting update. It's been a big time couple of weeks as spring games have started to happen. More and more visits have started to happen, so commitments are starting to roll in, and I will get you updated on all of that right after this.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about Caleb Williams and some of the criticisms around him and how I don't necessarily think they're all that fair. But let's jump into recruiting and talk about a little bit of an update around the world of recruiting. It's been a wild couple of weeks as spring games have started to happen. You know, you have big time visits, you have 40 different recruits on campus at one given time, and that makes ways for commitments, and they have started to roll in. So let's kind of roll through some commitments, then we'll get to some different rumblings in top 5s and 8s and 10s and all the different things that have happened, and then we'll give you a little bit of an update on the Elite 11 camp, the elite quarterback camp that goes on in LA every year, and give you an update on what's kind of shaping up to be out there in LA. But let's start with the commitments, and one that happened, I think, literally right as I got off air when I was talking about recruiting the last time, was Landon Rink, a 3-star D lineman committed to Texas A&M. He's someone that was sought after around so many different teams and is definitely could be a big-time run stuffer at the next level. Really like this pickup for A&M. I think it's, I think it's somewhat of a Elko. It's kind of a pickup that I think he will absolutely love. I think this is a kid that you will see a lot more of at Texas A&M. Big, stocky, kind of a run stuffer type guy that is going to play really hard-nosed football. So very excited about that kid. I think A&M is going to really like him when he gets on campus. And then a really big-time commitment happened shortly after that. Matt Zollers, a 4-star quarterback, committed to Missouri, something that honestly I think a lot of people did not expect. He was just coming off a visit from Athens at UGA. He had been flirting with Penn State for quite some time, so this is a huge pickup for Missouri and the Tigers and Eli Drinkwitz, especially with Brady Cook entering his final year. You want a kid that can walk in and take over the reins, and Matt Zollers might be able to do that in his freshman year, so it'll be really interesting to see how all of that kind of pans out. But very excited about this kid. He can throw it a country mile, so he's someone that I'm very, very excited to see in a Missouri uniform. But let's move on. UGA did not suffer too long after that Matt Zollers commit. They never really do. They got a commitment from Mason Short, a 4-star interior offensive lineman. He had been recruited literally everywhere in the country. Anyone that you could think of in the Power 5 has called this kid, but UGA ends up winning out. He was committed to Alabama prior to decommitting when Saban retired and committing to UGA. So obviously a huge pickup for UGA. They continue to pick up all the remarkable O-linemen that they can and continue that remarkable tradition of just funneling guys into the NFL at that position. But let's move on to Texas. They joined the commitment party later on in the day, getting one from Ricky Stewart, a 3-star running back. Tashard Choice is on a different level when it comes to recruiting the running back position and developing the running back position. He's someone that got Jahmyr Gibbs to come to Georgia Tech for the first couple of years of his college career. Once Tashard Choice took the job at Texas, Jahmyr Gibbs found his way to Alabama for his final year, and Tashard Choice took over with Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, 2 guys that are now in the NFL. And Jonathan Brooks might just be the number 1 running back in this upcoming draft. So Tashard Choice, his recruiting pitch is easy as pie at this point, to be totally honest with you, and he continues to rack in all of the remarkable players. But let's get on to a team we've been talking about a lot on this segment is USC. They have been on a remarkable run on the recruiting trail, and that just continued over the last couple of weeks. They added some offensive pieces this time around. They've been building out that defense more and more into what they need it to be, but he got back to the offensive side of the ball. Lincoln Riley did, where he's a little bit more comfortable. Got Dwayne Harris, a 3-star athlete. Romero Ison, a 3-star wide receiver. Both committed to the Trojans this week. And they also got Harry Dalton III, a 4-star running back, into the mix. So tons of very, very talented guys. 3 guys that absolutely will be in the mix in that Lincoln Riley offense coming down the road. So huge recruiting news in USC. Feels like it's happening every single day with them right now. They're just cooking. And then a couple other commitments. We had Luka Gilbert, a 4-star tight end, committed to Miami. Dylan Alford, a 3-star wide receiver, committed to Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. And then Marcus Wimberly, a 3-star safety, committed to Oklahoma. So 3 other guys definitely to watch. Definitely will be on your screen sometime very soon on fall. And then let's get around to kind of some rumblings and some different things happening around the recruiting world. Some guys dropped their top 5. One of the top players in the country dropped his top 8. So I wanted to get to all that. But let's start with DeCorian Moore. He is an LSU commit right now, a top wide receiver in the country. He's just coming off a visit from Texas, and he was very, very impressed. So much so that Texas insider Eric Nahlin, who does a remarkable job over there at Inside Texas, put in a crystal ball for him to flip from LSU to Texas. So this one's going to be an absolute battle. I know he is on his way to Ohio State this weekend for their spring game. So this one's going to be a real fight between LSU, Texas, and Ohio State. It seems like those are the teams that are really going to be battling for his services. But a little bit more news around Texas and Ohio State and both of these circumstances, actually. Jamie French is someone we've talked about a little bit, a former Alabama commit. He was up in Ohio State last week, made his way down to Texas this past weekend, and it sounds like Texas has joined Ohio State and Tennessee in his top 3, so that will be kind of a 3-horse race the rest of the way, and that one will take some time as well, along with DeCorian Moore, both very, very talented guys. Whoever can get them will be getting elite wide receivers the second they walk on campus. And then Jordan Davison is someone we've talked about a little bit. Ohio State seemed to be in really, really good position. He was in Texas as well this past week and came away very impressed. Texas has always been in a good position with this one. When you have to charge choice, as we talked about, it makes it a little bit easier to be in good positions with running backs. So Jordan Davison, I think that's kind of a 2-horse race between Texas and Ohio State. And that one is another one that will take quite some time to play out because he will be highly sought after to the day he signs. So pen meets paper, he is going to be called, and every team will want his services, that's for sure. And then let's talk about a couple of guys that got a little bit closer to making their decisions. Marcus Harris, a top wide receiver in this class from Mater D High School out in California, obviously a remarkable school with tons of remarkable talents coming through there. Bryce Young, one of the most recent ones that was a big-time player. But he has dropped his top 5 schools. They are Oregon, Bama, Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia. So one thing that kind of stands out to me here is Tennessee is doing a remarkable job recruiting wide receivers. They are in the mix for all of these guys. Now, I think Marcus Harris is leaning a little bit more Texas. I think they have kind of the inside track here, but at the end of the day, this one is one that he will be hearing from all 5 of these schools pretty much nonstop until he signs. So definitely will keep my eye out on that one. And then Trey McNutt, the top safety in this group, one of the top players in the entire class, dropped his top 8, which consists of Ohio State, Michigan, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Oregon, A&M, and USC. So kind of all over the country, a little bit of a mixed bag there. I think Ohio State tends to have the advantage here because he is from Shaker Heights, Ohio, but whoever gets him is getting a big-time player. He is someone that definitely has that kind of Caleb Downs type potential where he can walk onto your team and be your leading tackler his freshman year. So he's someone that's a huge time commit and definitely will be tracking him very, very closely as time goes on. But finally, let's get to kind of the Elite 11 camps, give you an idea of where they're at. Elite 11 is kind of taking a regional tour around the country. They do this every year as they prepare for the Elite 11 finals in LA, and they made their most recent stop in Oxford, Mississippi this past weekend, and there were tons of stars at this thing, but 2 guys absolutely stole the day. Tremble Jones Jr., a Florida State commit and a 4-star recruit, and Deuce Knight, a Notre Dame commit and also a 4-star recruit. Both those guys were absolutely insane. Deuce Knight, I think, won Alpha Dog of the camp, which is essentially high honors there. And both of them got invites to the Elite 11 finals in LA. Huge for them. They joined guys like KJ Lacey and Keelan Russell and a couple other guys. I can't exactly remember the group off the top of my head, but tons of Husan Longstreet, another one that is out there, but tons of really, really talented guys in this group. I mean, George McIntyre, who's a big-time Tennessee commit, was there. He did not get an invite. Grady Adamson, who is a recent Georgia Tech commit, had a really good camp, but again, didn't get the invite to the Elite 11 finals. So huge shout out to Trammell Jones Jr. and Deuce Knight for getting those invites. It's shaping up to be a remarkable group out there in LA. So very excited to see what happens there. Recruiting is still in its early stages for 2025. There will be many twists and turns as we get throughout the summer and into the fall. But at the end of the day, I will keep you updated with where everything stays. So don't you worry about that. It is going to be all over the place, but I'll do my best to keep updated and keep you guys updated. But we're going to take our final break here, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the Tennessee Volunteers, do another Spotlight Wednesday for y'all, break down what I think this team is capable of with Nico Iamaleava at the helm. So stick around, and we will be right back with that.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Good. Welcome back, everyone. We just talked about a little bit of recruiting news around the country, and now it's time for a Spotlight Wednesday. And we are talking about the Tennessee Volunteers today. A ton riding on this season, a team that could make a lot of noise, honestly. They are right on the outside of the SEC, of the top dogs of the SEC, that is. But a chance to jump right into the top dogs, even in this transfer portal coming up. But let's do this how we usually do. We'll break down the offense, the defense, the schedule, and then we'll go through kind of my overall thoughts and just kind of a mini prediction, I suppose, for how I expect this season to go. But let's jump right in and let's talk about their offense. And obviously, the quarterback room is what everyone is talking about. Nico Iamaleava taking over for Joe Milton is something that I think these fans have been longing for quite some time. I'll be totally honest with you. Nico is a remarkably talented quarterback, has had a great spring thus far, and definitely has made Tennessee fans very, very excited for this upcoming season. As we know, first-year starter in the SEC is a tough situation, but the talent is off the charts, the ability is off the charts. If he can put it together, this team is very interesting. But let's go over to running backs. They are replacing Jalen Wright at running back, a absolute speedster. That was a huge part of their offense a year ago. They do have Dylan Sampson on the roster, who is someone who is plenty capable of stepping into that starting role. Has about, I think, a little bit over 800 yards over his 2 years at Tennessee, but now stepping into a big-time role. It's possible that they dip their toe into the water to get a running back if the right one comes available in this upcoming portal, but at the end of the day, I think Dylan Sampson is more than capable of making this happen, and as we know with Josh Heupel, he does a remarkable job of putting running backs in really good positions. And then let's get to this wide receiver group. It is remarkably deep. I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. There's not necessarily that alpha that I tend to talk about when I talk about wide receiver rooms, but when you have these many guys, it might not matter. They have Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, Dante Thornton all coming back this year. Dante Thornton was a transfer from Oregon that had a kind of an up and down year, made some plays definitely for Tennessee, but wasn't necessarily the guy that they wanted him to be. He's taking another step forward this year, I would assume. And then Chris Braswell II transferred over from Tulane. He might actually be the wide receiver one in this group. Remarkably talented, had an incredible year last year with Tulane. And then you have guys like Chaz Nimrod, who made big-time plays last year. They're just remarkably deep, and they can do a ton of different things with rotations and keep these defenses on their toes. So very, very excited to see this. I think this wide receiver group, while you might not have the Jalen Hyatt of the group or the Cedric Tillman of the group, but you definitely do have plenty of talent in that room for Nico to spread the ball out to. So Tennessee fans should be feeling pretty good about that. The tight ends are very solid as well. Holden Stays coming over from Notre Dame is a huge part of that. He will definitely certainly be the number one guy. There's not a ton behind him. There are some younger guys that definitely could make big-time jumps and be a bigger part of this offense, but I expect Holden Stays to be the go-to guy, to be kind of the every down tight end for them. So very excited to see what he can do. He was stuck behind Mitchell Evans a little bit last year, who's one of the best tight ends in the country. So found a new place to play, and I think it was a great place for him. And then O-line group is a really solid group. They're returning 4 starters, brought in Lance Hurd from LSU, which is an absolutely huge pickup, a guy that almost definitely will be playing on Sundays here pretty soon, is remarkably talented, remarkably long, but is taking over a left tackle position that is a big-time position. It will be the first time he plays big-time snaps week over week, and he's going to have to be ready for it. They got guys, Cooper Mays and Andre Karich are coming back. They're a good duo at center and left guard, so that left side of the line is going to be a little bit stronger, and that will help Lance Hurd kind of get a little bit more comfortable in this system. And I think it's a really, really solid group. You know, you definitely could use a little bit more top-line talent, but definitely if they can put it together and be a unit of 5, I think they could be really, really solid this year and give Nico plenty of time to kind of dice up these defenses the way he's capable of. But let's move over to the defensive side of the ball, and let's start with the D-line. It's a solid group. There's not necessarily any total game changers on the interior. I think they have Bryson Eason is a definite guy that's coming back that is going to be huge for them. He made some big time plays last year. I think started 7 games if I'm not mistaken. So definitely has that experience. Will be a big time player for them. They could dip their toe into the water for this one, but not necessarily sure how great they feel about them coming out of spring. It could be that they feel totally fine, but if the right guy comes on the market, I wouldn't be surprised if they at least gave them a call. And then edge is where the money's going to be made on this defense. The edge is going to be a huge position, and it's just because James Pierce Jr. might just be, at least for my money, is the best returning edge in the country. He might be the best defensive player in the country. Now, I tend to lean a little bit more Caleb Downs' direction, but I fully understand if you go James Pearson route. But he's a total difference maker, will be a nightmare for pretty much every left tackle he faces throughout the year. Had 10 sacks a year ago, and I expect him to increase on that. So I think he's just going to be remarkable, and he's one of the few guys that is a non-quarterback that could go number 1 overall in next year's draft, depending on just how dominant he is. Now, the linebacker room is a little bit interesting. Keenan Pili is someone that is huge to get back. They're bringing him back after he was injured in the season opener a year ago. He could be absolutely huge for them at middle linebacker. And then you have someone like Arian Carter, who is absolutely just an athletic freak. He is someone that can do so many different things. Very, very solid duo for them. I think this is another position where they might just dip their toe into the transfer portal waters, but we'll see what happens there. I think this back end of this defense is interesting. They're losing guys like Kamal Hayden and Jalen McCullough, who were big-time players for them and definitely will be tough to replace. The portal has given them some options, for sure. Jermaine McCoy coming over from Oregon State, Jacoby Thomas coming over from Middle Tennessee State, both players that are going to have to be absolutely huge for them. Andre Tarantine, who I think you can see over here at some point in one of these slides, is going to be a big-time player returning for them in the back end of that defense. It's definitely a capable group, but they're going to have to put it together and make sure that these starters are ready to roll, because it's going to be a lot of big-time passing attacks coming that way this season. But let's get into the schedule finally, and it's pretty manageable. It's a confusing schedule, to be totally honest with you, but let's jump in. An easy win over Chattanooga to start. At least I hope it's an easy win. Then they're handed a really tough matchup against NC State in Charlotte in week 2, and that one is scary. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I talked about NC State and their spring game. I have high expectations for the Wolfpack this year, and this is a place where they can make a big-time statement. Tennessee does not want to enter SEC play with a loss, so it's going to be tough, but if they can come out and win that one, and if somehow they can win it convincingly, then Tennessee will definitely get my attention very, very quickly. Then they have Kent State on the docket before they take a trip to Oklahoma. This will be Oklahoma's first SEC game, will be Tennessee's first game against Oklahoma as SEC foes, and this one's going to be fun. I've talked a little bit about it when going through the best games of every week. This was definitely on the list. And Josh Heupel going back to his old team. Brent Venables playing a team that he does not love necessarily by any means. So it'll be very interesting to see that one unfold. And then coming off a bye, they head into a game against Arkansas before coming home to play Florida, a game that they're just going to have to win. Both those games are really games that they're going to have to win if they want to be the team that a lot of Tennessee fans expect this year. So they're going to have to get those wins because the one coming right after them is the third weekend in October, and you all know what that means. It's Bama time. So things get very, very quickly. If they can make things happen, there is a bye after this game, so definitely shapes up for them to, at the very least, leave everything on the field and possibly pull off some of that 2021 magic. But I think that's the game that if they can win that one, they are no longer, an interesting team that you're watching. They're downright a contender that deserves the ultimate attention as we go on throughout the season. The back end of the schedule is very doable. After, the Georgia and the Bama games kind of rear their ugly head, or I guess the Georgia game is coming up here, but Kentucky out of town, or excuse me, Kentucky at home to start after the bye, and then you have a tough game, or that will be a tough game, and definitely will be one that will be a ton of fun. I'm excited to see Brock Vandegrift against Nico Iamaleava. I think those are two guys that are very young, have remarkably high ceilings that I think they could hit, and if they do, this game will be big time when it comes around. But then you have Mississippi State coming to town before a big time trip to Athens. You have to do it every year. It's a tough one every single year, it feels like, but they definitely are capable of making noise. If they win that game, then things get very interesting. But then they finish off with UTEP and at Vandy, two likely wins. They should be able to roll there. So in a year where you face Bama and UGA on your schedule, this is about as good as it gets. Not going to be easy, definitely doable. If Nico can kind of hit that ceiling that a lot of people have given him, they could definitely pull this off and do remarkable things this year. I think this is a remarkably talented group. I think Nico is more than capable of stepping into those big-time shoes and delivering pretty much right away, but you never really know. It's going to be an interesting road, and this schedule, while doable, is definitely still an SEC schedule. There's no two ways about that. But some final thoughts on them and kind of where they sit. I think we know what Josh Heupel is capable of when he has the quarterback in place. He proved that in 2021 with Hendon Hooker. Honestly, if Hendon Hooker doesn't get injured, they might be in the playoff. Hendon Hooker might have a Heisman Trophy right now. A lot of things might be different. Nico Iamaleava could be better than Hendon Hooker. I'll be totally honest with you. In fact, I expect him, at least in the long run, to be better than Hendon Hooker. It might not be this year, but he's definitely someone that the talent is just off the charts with this kid. This team is capable of doing just so many different things. We talked about the defensive side of the ball. The offense is going to be huge. If the offense is, a 2021 type offense, the good news for them is they have an absolute game changer on defense in James Pierce Jr. that they didn't have in 2021. So I think this is something that this team, if they can put it together on the offensive side of the ball, the defense is going to give them plenty of opportunities throughout the year. So very excited to see what this team can do. I like this team a lot. The level of pressure that Nico Iamaleava is going to be under is going to be tough. It's something like he's never experienced before, but I think he's capable of making it happen. I think he's capable of handling it, but we'll see. It'll be really, really interesting to watch this team throughout the spring, into the summer and fall, but we will keep you updated. I am very, very glad it is not prediction time because I am not comfortable making a prediction on this team right now. They are very tough to nail down, especially before this transfer portal window, but we will definitely touch on them afterwards because I think they'll be a little bit active in this portal window if I had to guess. But that will do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a ton to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference for us. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the updates and content you could possibly need. We have so many people covering every sport you could possibly think of. So if you're a football fan, basketball fan, baseball fan, wrestling fan, we got it all covered on our page. So definitely give us a follow there. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.